Welcome back, infidels. Today we're going to talk about ancient Persia. Now, you won't see Allah mentioned specifically here like you did in the Babylonian section, but there is a lot going on here that helps feed into what's happening today. So I did want to cover Persia for that reason. As always, we have our pre-readings. From the Book of the Ancient World, I'd like you to focus on the section dealing with the Persians, pages 165 through 183. The Book of Daniel from the Bible. Now, I know I asked you to do this for the Babylonian section, so if you already have, what I would do is just skim the last 6 chapters, okay? I wrote a couple of optional films here down for you. Disney's Aladdin and the 300. Now, lots of caution with this one. It really is not appropriate for children, but what you can do is you can watch it by yourself and maybe pick out a couple of cool screenshots or battle scenes that you can show to your little infidels so they can get an idea of how the Greeks and the Persians fought each other, because it is kind of cool. As always, everyone's got a different parenting style, so please listen to this lecture first by yourself and look over the readings first before presenting either one to your child. All right, here we have Persia, lasts from 559 to 323 BC. As you can see, it's a lot larger than the Babylonian Empire was. Comes all the way up through here, through Turkey, almost all of Turkey, down through Syria, Jordan, Israel, part of Egypt's in here, all of Iraq. We've got Iran over here, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and even a little bit of India right here. Quite impressive in its heyday. A little bit about Persian culture. The Persian people were mostly shepherds and tribes until Cyrus the Great united them. Their art is heavily borrowed from surrounding cultures, mainly Babylonian. To this day, the people of Afghanistan and Iran become offended when they're called Arabs. They consider themselves Persians. Rug weaving originated in this empire and is still practiced today. And on that note, here's some rugs. This was an actual Persian rug. They come in all different colors and sizes, but this is just an idea of the beautiful patterns you'll see in them. This little guy you've probably seen before. He's Carpet from Disney's Aladdin, but I'm sure that the Disney artists had a lot of influence from actual Persian rugs. As you can see, he's very similar in his pattern to this guy, right? Not many people have heard of Persian ballet. You may have heard of belly dancing, but Persian ballet is just a little bit different. And it originated here, and it was practiced here for many, many centuries until the Islamic Revolution of Iran in 1979. At that point, it became outlawed, and people who were dancing and practicing this form of dance, they had to leave the country. A lot of them went to the U.S., Canada, Australia, places like that. But this type of dance is no longer allowed in its country of origin due to Islamic moral codes. Kind of sad, huh? And I already touched on this. You can read over the slide. We're going to learn more why they don't allow it when we begin to study Islam. Okay? I'm sure you've seen this lovely lady before, Princess Jasmine. Midriff outfits, specifically the type she's wearing, a lot of Persian influence here, okay? She's arguably the best known example of Persian dress in the West. This is from the movie 300, and this is just an artist's imagination at work here. Of course, we don't know exactly what Xerxes' palace looked like, but we can imagine. As I said, they borrowed heavily from the Babylonians, so you can see this kind of step-shaped sort of thing going on here with the palace. And then over here we have some giant horses. Horses were important in Persian culture as well. And this is King Xerxes, the way that they imagined him to be in the movie 300. Here's some more Persian art. Very similar to the Babylonian art. Right here is a symbol of Zoroastrianism. And we'll get to that religion in just a minute. This is Behustan rock. It's basically carved out of the side of a cliff, and it's kind of like a Persian Rosetta Stone. A lot of you guys have heard of us not being able to translate the ancient Egyptian language for years prior to the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, because on it there were several different languages that we already knew. This is kind of similar. So some of the ancient languages over there are represented on this, and that's how we're able to translate them. Going to go a little bit into the politics. Already talked about Cyrus. He's mentioned in the Bible. He's also called King Darius. So if you look at your King James and, Daniel's talking to Darius and you say, hey, what's up here? Well, they kind of use that name interchangeably with Cyrus. He was the one, again, that united the Persian shepherd tribes, conquered Babylon, and he, even though he still ruled over Israel, they were basically free under his rule in a way. He let the Hebrews return to their homeland. He let them rebuild the temple, practice their religion, basically do what they wanted. Prior to all this, though, you do have that scene between Daniel and Cyrus and the thing about him being thrown into the lion's den. I think a large part of why Cyrus allowed them to return is because he figured, well, if this guy's God can save him from lions, what else can he do? I better respect that. This is a really cool video taken from the mini-series The Bible. If you want to, just go ahead and copy and paste the link. And it just shows that part where Daniel gets thrown into the lion's den. Here's more kings of Persia. So, of course, after Cyrus dies, the empire is passed on. There are a few more in between him and Xerxes, but I'm just going to mention the famous ones here. Of course, Xerxes, this is the king who invaded Greece and fought the 300. And that's what the movie 300 is about. Darius, not the Cyrus Darius, but the last Darius. He was the last king of Persia, and Alexander the Great of Greece conquered him. At this point, the Persian Empire pretty much dissipates and becomes underneath Alexander the Great. So Zoroastrianism, was the Persian religion, and this is its symbol. There are still quite a few people that practice it today, although it's less popular, obviously, than it was at the time of ancient Persia. It was founded by a prophet Zoroaster, and this guy was a hermit. He wanted to go into the mountains because he wanted to discover what truth was. He felt like we had some higher purpose as human beings, and so he kind of went up there and meditated. At the end of his meditation, he returned to the Persians and said that he'd had an encounter with a god named Amritsar. Basically, this god was a good god, and he's in an eternal struggle with evil. The god is basically in the east, and the spirit of evil is in the west, because the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So he was associated with light and fire and everything that was good. The Zoroastrians, they worshipped in the hills, on the mountaintops in front of large fires. Fire was considered to be like a medium. When they kind of spoke and oriented themselves to the fire, Amritsar was able to understand them and hear their prayers, and then Amritsar would speak back through the fire. So he was a god associated with the element of fire, and still is to this day. Once the ancient Persians had been practicing Zoroastrianism for a long time, they started to receive what they believed were messages and inspiration from Amritsar, and the inspiration was for them to go out into the world and conquer more territory for Amritsar. It was a form of jihad in a way because it was divinely inspired, but the goal was not to convert everyone or to suppress everyone. The goal was just to get the territory for Amritsar. So, in a way, it was the first form of jihad. Although, I would argue a much kinder and gentler version than the kind practiced today. Just a little bit more about Zoroastrianism. Of course, fire is the element sacred to their chief god, and he's in a struggle with the spirit of evil for all eternity. The struggle will never end, they believe. There's a heavy emphasis placed upon stars, planet, and sign reading. A lot of historians believe that the three wise men who came to see Christ were actually Zoroastrians, and the only reason they knew about Christ is that they were able to interpret the heavens and do a lot of sign reading. Zoroastrianism may be why King Cyrus was so compassionate to the Israelites, because the Israelites were monotheistic. Zoroastrianism is also a monotheistic religion. The only God in it is Ar-Muzada. And just like in Judaism, the only God is Yahweh or Jehovah. Okay, Persia flourishes until around 331 BC, when Alexander the Great, who's a Greek, conquers Persia, King Darius III, and expands the Greek Empire. And this happens in the Battle of Guagama. Okay, and you can see he pretty much gets all of Persia's empire and then some up here. Okay. Here's just a quote from Alexander the Great. We're going to learn more about him when we study the Greeks. Alright, in conclusion, the Persians were one of the largest empires in the ancient world. They performed the first jihad, although a much kinder version than what is practiced today. Cyrus the Great essentially freed the Hebrew people. Xerxes fought the 300 Spartans. Persian rugs, ballet, dance, and creative female dress originated here. Due to Islam, many of these practices are no longer allowed in Iran. And here are my sources. Again, if they're too small, I'll be happy to email them to you. And just let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for listening, infidels.